and I would just have it all to myself, and they arranged that. So I took my cast to this closed-down summer camp in the winter, and the snow was like this. And we're playing Vietnam guys out in the snow, doing, we had, remember Dennis Farina, the actor?
What would he be?
He was in Get Shorty, and he was in a television.
Echo?
Snatch.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wait, if I'm remembering correctly, right?
Yeah, he was in a lot of stuff. You'd recognize him. He's a Vietnam veteran himself, and he was just getting into acting, and I cast him as the drill instructor. And so I told Dennis, you're going to be the drill instructor up at this summer camp with us. And so I want you to wake us up at 3 a.m, banging on things, and make everybody go out in the snow and do push-ups. And so we did a whole thing up there for 4 or 5 days, and it was just so galvanizing for the cast to come together in this isolated place. Nobody was around. We're out in the middle of the woods, and nobody's around, and we were just there doing our sort of military thing together and bonding as a cast. I directed the play. I wasn't in it, but I did everything that they were doing, and we went out in the snow and did the whole thing. And it was an ingredient in the preparation of the play that was really, I think, just super to bond this cast together. I was very, very committed, because of the Vietnam veterans in my own family, to telling these stories properly, and having seen the original production twice and watching all these Vietnam veterans. They weren't, there were only 2 of them in that original cast that wrote this play that had done any acting before. All the rest of them were veterans. And they just came together, and over a 6-month period, they exercised their demons into a script and wrote a play based on their experiences in Vietnam, what it was like to be there, serve there, come home from there, all that stuff. And they put it into this play, and I saw it. It was very powerful, and they were all veterans performing their own stories. And I thought, I'm going to do my best to live up to that. They are entrusting me with their script, and they're not giving it to anybody else, and they're entrusting me with the script. And for them and the Vietnam veterans in my own family, I want to make sure that my cast really gets this thing, why we're doing it, the importance of it. And this is 1983, so the wall was opened, just prior to that, right? The Vietnam veteran really hadn't been welcomed home yet. I don't know if you're younger than I am, but in 84, 85, all of a sudden there were some welcome home parades for the Vietnam veteran, the parades that they never got when they came home, the welcome home experience that they were denied. And this play, Tracers, was happening right around the same time. So something was changing. And I remember the cast was so powerful. They really got what I was trying to do. We rehearsed the play. We put it on its feet. And I wanted veterans to come see it, right? It was very important to me that veterans would come see this show. So we made Tuesday night free for veterans. And the word spread throughout the community in Chicago, and veterans, especially Vietnam veterans, were coming in droves. And some nights, some of those Tuesday nights, we would have nothing but veterans almost in the audience. At this point, we were in another new theater that had 220 seats. And can you imagine that? Veterans coming with their own family members, and they've never talked about their own experiences, and now their family members are watching these actors on stage kind of relive some of the things that they'd gone through. And we would have discussions after the show, and people would ask questions, and the veterans would talk, and they would talk about their experience, and their wife is sitting right next to them, and she's going, he never said any of this to me before. It was a real cathartic, healing thing that happened with Tracers, and it changed my life and galvanized something in me that would take root very deeply in the coming years.
You say in here about it, after each performance, we received a standing ovation. The crowd cheered wildly. The reviews all came back positive. We decided to provide a free performance, which you go into. And then you say this, today, people often ask me about the highlights of my career. Tracers is one, an incredibly meaningful, absolutely extraordinary experience. As we did this play, I could see that the veterans felt like something was happening for them. They'd been stuck in the shadows, discredited, abused, or simply ignored, and now they were watching these actors honor them and bring their stories out of the shadows. I will always be grateful to John DeFusco and the cast of Tracers for the opportunity to work on this life-changing play. For the first time, I felt like I was giving back by honoring our veterans, by not letting them fall through the cracks, by not letting them feel unappreciated or forgotten. I met many Vietnam veterans who had attended our free performances. And in the early 1990s, I was asked to help raise funds to build the Lansing Veterans Memorial in Lansing, Illinois. A Vietnam veteran who had seen Tracers, Tom Luberta, organized the creation of the memorial. It features the names of our fallen heroes on a black granite wall with a giant UH-1 Huey helicopter mounted overhead, while a statue of a soldier carrying a wounded comrade to the awaiting chopper stands as a reminder to never leave anyone behind. I was honored to play some small part in helping Tom and the veterans realize their dream. And to say thanks for my involvement, they put my brother-in-law's name on the wall. Lieutenant Colonel Boyd McCanna Harris, U.S. Army 9th Infantry Division, Americal Division, Vietnam. When here I'm going to perhaps reveal my own personal lack of culture, which is not very hard to uncover, right? I'm not a very cultured person, right? I grew up in the military. I just, I didn't go to museums or go to see plays or whatever. When you do this, when you do plays, theater, right? Do you ever feel like, hey, it's gone? Like, we're sitting here talking about Tracers. I want to watch it. I want to go watch it. And, you can't. Do you feel like that? Or is that something that kind of provides some of the magic to it because it's something that's fleeting?
Yeah, it's a living kind of thing that when it's over, it's over. Unless you've got something like, Cats or something, which just, Phantom of the Opera, over. That never over. It's, in its fourth decade, and it's continuing on. That's the thing about theater. Sometimes I've been in things that were over and then restarted again, and then we did it again, and then we did it again. Because there was more blood to suck out of it, But it was because it was something really positive, something really good, something creative, and something that we wanted to keep alive a little bit more. The Grapes of Wrath was kind of like that. When we put the Grapes of Wrath on stage, a 650-page book, and we adapted it for the stage, and we put it on stage in Chicago in 1988. Then we put it back up again. We took it to La Jolla, California, and London in 1989, and then we moved it to Broadway in 1990, and it won the Tony Award. That was an ongoing sort of. We kept working on it and kept refining it, kept making it better, and everything. Sometimes you get those kind of projects that have a big life, but generally, when you're doing a season of plays, you're doing 5 plays. You wrap it up after 5 weeks, and it's done. You go on to the next play.
I just did these live gigs. I did 6 of them. And each one of them was different. So, yeah, each one of them was different. Like as a matter of fact, the one I did, and I was writing them right before I do them. And it was interesting because, like, when we do the podcast, right, it's recorded. It's there for all practical purposes. It's going to be there for a long time, right? It's on the interwebs. those live gigs were one shot, and that made it very interesting for me because I knew that I was just going to do this one time. The other thing is I got the feeling of what it was like to have a bunch of people sitting right there, because in the podcast, right, it's just Echo sitting there, or whoever the guest is sitting there, and we're talking about something, but you forget that there's a million people out there, right? Or you don't forget it, but it's different.
Right.
The impact of having these people, having people sitting there with you in the room is, there's a little, I started thinking about, as you were describing this, I'm like, oh, that's that thing. That's why, because let's face it, if you look at it from a pragmatic perspective, go to a movie, right? From a pragmatic perspective, hey, you don't need to get a bunch of human beings on a weird stage somewhere and do all these lights and have them try and remember their little lines. No, you go and see a movie. But there's a reason why the theater still exists, and that's because there's this thing of going live. It's the same thing with seeing a live rock concert, right? Hey, why not just watch a DVD of the band playing their hits, right? You could say that's a pragmatic solution, right? From just a practical sense. Oh, I'll just put on the DVD. Going to see a fight. Hey, going to see a fight, you get a much better view when you're sitting at home on your 87-inch flat screen television. But
you can record it.
And you can record it. You can rewind it, right? You can replay it. But when you're there in the Coliseum, there's something going on. So I guess that's what I was trying to figure out. If you ever felt like, oh, hold on a second, how do we capture this? And I guess part of the magic is that you can't fully capture it. You have to do it live.
From night to night, it's going to change too. I mean, the blueprint is the same, but because the audience is reacting differently from night to night, the actors adjust too, and you discover things along the way. The play is never the same at the end of the run as it is at the beginning of the run, because it evolves. Once you factor in the audience and their participation with you and the interaction that they have with you while they're watching the play, things evolve. You learn things along the way. Things change. I remember we did a play, me and Malkovich, called True West. And the two of us played brothers, and it was a long run, and we were off Broadway. It was the first thing we did in New York, and the thing that kind of put us sort of on a national map. And that play evolved quite a bit. We were improvising, we were changing things. This was written by Sam Shepard, and a very, very well written play. A lot of people have done it. But by the end of the run for us, it had gone into a whole other thing. And it was simply because John and I are the kinds of actors that are going to give and take and bounce around. He's going to do something different from night to night. So I'll react differently, or vice versa, or whatever. And therefore, if it works, you keep it. And so the play evolves as time goes on. It's really a neat experience, live theater performance, but it's also endurance. It's 8 shows a week. If you're doing a play like True West, which is two brothers fighting on stage, beating each other up, going crazy, screaming and yelling, blah blah blah, night after night after night. It's an endurance test. I couldn't do that particular thing. As I'm 64 now, I'd like I'd play the psychiatrist, sit and ask questions in the chair.
I had this weird. So again, I'm only just diving into this a little bit because I have an actual professional here. I was doing these live gigs, and as I was going to do them, so I know a bunch of comedians, and not a bunch, but I know a few comedians. And some of them are really good, like Joe Rogan and Theo Vaughn. So I have some relationships with some of these guys, and I kind of listen to them talk about being a comedian. And one of the things that they talk about is when you're making a show, they go out to like a small club and they do like their routine, and then they